You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. We certainly appreciate you coming by the show. You guys are the most valuable, juicy audience in the world. I don't know what that means. If you're a juicy audience, I don't know. I just made it up because that's what we do on the Ramble. I just make stuff up every time there's a different ramble. There's people that actually tune in just to listen to the ramble. Can you believe that? Because they're just like, I want to see what Chris just makes up today. So you guys are now known as the juicy audience. I think, what is the Bieber has the Bieberettes, or I don't know what his bullshit is. I don't care. There's somebody else. I forget that one other gal who was in that one movie and from the 70s that Chris Christopherson was in, but they remade it. Anyway, Brad, somebody was in it too. Anyway, she's got like some things that she calls her people, and I don't really care. I'm just done with this whole rap that I just started, and I can't finish because I got no references I can pull. But that's half the joke, people. Sometimes you try and tell a joke, you can't pull the reference, and it dies. And hopefully that kills, it makes you laugh. But if it doesn't, well, then that's on you, man. Because I'm going to laugh at it. And I'm the only one laughing. Anyway, guys, as always, you guys are the most amazing audience as well. Refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, goodreads.com/Chris Voss. And we're trying to be cool on TikTok, so check that out as well. And also, there are 1,400 plus episodes of the Chris Voss Show now. 14 years, 2 to 3 new ones a day. Simon Schuster's like auto-booking the show and killing me on the schedule. If you are not listening to these episodes, I will die and haunt you for the rest of your life. So don't let that happen. Anyway, we love you guys. We have an amazing returning guest on the show. We always love our returning guests because they're so brilliant. We have M.P. Woodward on the show today. He's the author of his newest book in a series to come out May 23rd, 2023. See, you like how that 23 falls into there? I just kind of noticed that was funny. Anyway, his new book, Dead Drop, which is part of his handler theory, a handler thriller series that he has. He was joining us on his prior book that had come out, I think, what was that, last year? When did that come out? The Handler.
Yeah, The Handler was exactly a year ago.
Yeah, the time flies when you're having fun. So this is his second part of that series of his handler thriller series. He is joining us today, as you can hear in the background. He's already piping up in the background and getting on the show, but we're going to make him hold for 1 second. We'll read his bio because that's the juice. Or no, he's the juice. I don't know. There's a lot of juicing going on the show. Juicy. I don't know. That's the callback joke, I think, for the show. M.P. Woodward is a veteran of both U.S. intelligence ops and the entertainment industry. As a naval intelligence officer with the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, he scripted scenario moves and counter-moves for U.S. wargame exercises in the Middle East. In multiple deployments to the Persian Gulf and Far East, he worked alongside U.S. Special Forces, CIA, and NSA, and he later transitioned to the private sector as an executive in the media streaming industry. Most recently, he ran international partner distribution for Amazon Prime and Prime Video. Welcome to the show, Mr. Woodward. How are you?
Hey, Chris, it's great to be back. Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you back, an honor as well. Give us your .com so people can find you on the interwebs.
Yeah, you bet. That's mpwoodward.com.
There you go. And it's Mike, right?
Yeah, we'll go by Mike. Yeah.
We'll go by Mike, but Google him on the MP Woodward. So, Mike, what motivated you on to write this latest book?
A couple things. First off, I'm really enjoying the thriller genre. We got a tremendous response from The Handler. People told me over and over again they wanted to know what happened next. So I wrote a story where I can tell everybody what happens next. But the subject matter was something else that caught my attention. This book is about what would happen when Iran actually does get to what the intelligence community calls breakout, which is enriching uranium-235 to 90% or better, and how both the U.S. and Israel would respond to that.
There you go. And Israel does not like that sort of stuff, from my understanding of weather activities.
Yeah, they're not too fond of it. And what we explore in the book is the characterization is through Mossad and a lot of details on Mossad. And on the Iranian side, the real threat becomes, well, while on the one hand there might be a diplomatic effort to contain a nuclear Iran, there's still a country with lots and lots of terrorist resources, mainly through Hezbollah, which is kind of a country within a country in Lebanon. So this book explores the idea that while there might be diplomatic initiatives for everybody to play nice, Iran could still get a nuclear warhead through to Hezbollah, which is parked right on the northern border of Israel and therefore an existential threat.
Definitely. And I mean, these are, real things that are going on in our world too. I was reading recently that Iran was working on developing nuclear material under a mountain so that, the U.S. would have a harder time dropping one of those bombs that go through bunkers.
Well, that's just it, is that they are doing that. They have been doing that. The nuclear deal that President Obama signed with them in 2015 was undone in 2018. And all along, Iran has more or less thwarted inspections by the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Association. And all the evidence suggests that they are making tremendous strides on enriching uranium. And yeah, I don't think that this is something certainly that Israel would stand by and let happen. One time when I was in the service, I met an Israeli fighter pilot, and I asked him, how far would Israel go to keep Iran from getting a nuclear weapon? And he said 2,000 nautical miles. So it gives you kind of an idea of their mindset and how hard they would work to either prevent this from happening or do something once it does happen.
Yeah, they've assassinated scientists, nuclear scientists, and different things. So tell us about the character. Is this a playthrough from the character of your previous books? And let's tell us more about the protagonist that you developed in the book.
Yeah, sure. So the protagonists, it's really two protagonists that work hand in hand with each other, though not very well because they're a divorced couple. So the woman, whose name is Meredith, is reasonably senior in the CIA, and she works in which is a real world thing, the Counterproliferation Center, which is the group within the CIA that works day and night to do everything they can to thwart adversarial countries from getting nuclear weapons. Her ex-husband is someone who left the CIA some time ago, but has a number of relationships that are important. That was true in The Handler as well. It becomes more true in this one, as the U.S. has an asset, a defected Iranian Quds officer under its control, but he really will only deal with the guy that doesn't want to deal with him, Meredith's ex-husband. But together they have to solve a mystery as to whether Iran is smuggling a weapon to Hezbollah or not. Meanwhile, the Israelis are convinced that they are. The Americans on a political level are working on a diplomatic deal, so they kind of don't want to hear that the Iranians are doing something bad. This ends up pitting the Mossad against the CIA. So much of the book pivots around that adversarial relationship.
Yeah, the billing on it says they are pawns in an international chess game. And any player knows you cannot capture the king without sacrificing some pawns. Tell us a little bit about that, or tease out what you can on it. I know we can't give away everything.
Yeah, sure. We're basically talking about three countries: the U.S., Israel, and Iran. And all three have their interests and agenda. In the book, they're dramatized through John and Meredith on the American side, through the Iranian Quds officer, as well as the counterintelligence people who are looking to find him, and especially Mossad, where we have the leader of the operations group in Mossad that's called Caesarea, and his protege who is an assassin. And Mossad thinks that the Americans are holding back information from them because they think that, we do have this Quds officer. We don't admit that we have this Quds officer because in so doing, that would screw up the diplomatic deal. So the Israelis think that the Americans are being soft and political. They really want to get at this Quds officer because he can tell them everything. And so the Israelis end up spying on the Americans.
Yeah, that's been going on, back and forth as everyone's spying on spy versus spies. They used to say in Mad Magazine. I used to love that comment.
Well, it has. And Israel's a great ally of the United States, of course, and the most significant ally we have in the Middle East. But countries, at the end of the day, are all about their own interests and their survival, no matter how tight that relationship. And back in the 70s, the FBI arrested an Israeli spy named Jonathan Pollard, who was a naval intelligence guy and was passing along secrets to Israel. Back in the early 70s, there was even armed conflict between Israel and the U.S. Most people have forgotten about this, but we had an intelligence ship called the Liberty in the Eastern Mediterranean. The Israelis didn't like that we were snooping on them and actually bombed it. So countries that we think of as being natural allies don't always play nice with each other. And I wanted to explore that idea that if a country like Israel was facing an existential threat and had the capabilities that they do with Mossad, that they would use them and they would get to the answer they needed and take the actions they needed to take, regardless of what the American political position was.
Most definitely. It's interesting how that whole relationship, I mean, the whole Middle East thing is such a crazy thing. We've had some authors on that talked about the history of all the different presidents who, going back to Carter and stuff, and probably Nixon, but going back to, I think about Carter when every administration would come in and be like, we will be the administration to solve this problem. And the characters you develop in the book, now you've got a second book in the series. What do you think most of the readers that read your books find appealing about those characters and what goes into them?
What I hear, and this is certainly something that I try to do, but that people describe these as character-driven novels, and while I try to have a big, juicy, you use the word juicy, juicy geopolitical setting, that's really the context for characterizations. And one of the things that I set out to do is to not treat intelligence agencies as big, monolithic, secret organizations and they're magical and can do anything, but really to portray this as these are ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And that means getting in the head of the Americans, of the Israelis, of the Iranians. That means that they have families and family concerns and the same sort of mundane challenges going on in their lives that the rest of us have too. They just happen to have a different job with much higher stakes. So I try to make these people as real as possible and fill them up with emotion. And hopefully that makes for a much more satisfying read.
Kind of humanizes it maybe in a way. Does that sound like a good thing?
Completely. And, I probably need tons and tons of therapy by the time I get done with these books, because to me, at the end, they always seem so utterly real. These are people that have become real to me. And if I ever get stuck on, a plot point, all I do is put the people in the room and they're so real to me that I sort of know how they're going to react, if that makes any sense. But that's a lot of, at least my psychology as I'm writing these.
Well, this sounds great for a juicy audience. I think what I'm going to do is every show, I'm just going to get me a verb and I'm going to start calling my audience that for the show to play.
It's not a bad idea. I think juicy might be an adjective, but
yeah,
you could juice things. There's a verb. If we go with that.
See, I didn't know it was an adjective because I flunked second grade.
Yes.
So there you go. Your experience is quite vast in working with the intelligence agency and the military. Tell us a little bit how that plays out. we've had a lot of great authors on the show and novelists lately that, they experience, they worked in the military for 30 years. We're trying to get James Comey, the ex-FBI director, on the show for his new book. And, it's kind of interesting how everyone who's worked in the intelligence business and the military has is the ability to create these juicy stories of suspense.
Yeah, juicing it up. In my case, I am fortunate that as an intelligence officer in the Navy, I got to see the way the 17 agencies within the U.S. come together to basically inform warfighters. And my job, at least for a period with the Pacific Command, was to write wargaming scenarios for everything from, natural disasters to full on war. And in so doing, you're looking to create all kinds of realism, which means working with all these other agencies to really filter out information, to create challenges, etc. That ended up being pretty good training ground for writing books, because it makes you think about a whole bunch of different things that are happening simultaneously, and the way that big professional agencies and organizations like the U.S. military have to assess and act and react, oftentimes with only partial information. So that's what I'm always trying to portray in my books, because that's what I saw happening in the real world.
And I think it makes the books even more richer, or if we can abuse the word juicy, because like I said, everybody we have on that's a popular selling novelist like yourself, they all have military backgrounds or intelligence backgrounds. And so they're able to pull from this vast database that they had over the years serving. And they've been able to enjoy it. But I think it makes for better book reading, because, if I wrote a book, it would be about, the CIA or FBI. It would be like dumb. Because it'd just be like,
well, when I've always been a fan of this genre, grew up with Tom Clancy, etc. One of the things that made those books really satisfying, I think, and the reason they took off, is because it was one of the first times we saw a lot of authenticity being poured into this genre. So before, I feel like it was spy genres, good stuff like John le Carre, guys like that. But when Clancy came along, it was really the first time he took that stuff going on with the Cold War, but backed it up with technology descriptions and operational descriptions that we really hadn't seen before. People had never been inside a submarine. They didn't know what it was like. And all of a sudden you get Hunt for Red October, and it's like, oh yeah, I get it. And that's both a spy story as well as a military story. So that informed a lot of my thinking. And I think, like you, if I pick up a book and don't see authenticity, you detect it pretty fast, and it blows everything up. Suspension of disbelief is gone, right? You kind of don't trust it. Like, you lose the ability, in my opinion, to be entertained. Now, there's times when you're willing to let that go. If you go to a big Marvel movie, you know what you're in for, right? And you're going to let all kinds of crazy things happen that have nothing to do with the real world. But I think people that buy books like this, they're looking for authenticity, and I try really hard to provide that.
Yeah, and plug the Tom Clancy books. We just had one of the other authors on, and Don Bentley is returning the show for the new.
I know Don very well. Was with him in Austin 2 nights ago, and he and I are going to be together in Scottsdale at the Poison Pen on June 13th at 7 p.m. If anybody would like to go.
There you go. And he must be following you around, because in 2 days he's on. So there you go.
Yeah, that's Don. He's always chasing me down.
He's always following you. I think this will be his second return to the show. So you got him beat by 2 days. So There you go. But yeah, I think we've had everybody on the show except for Tom Clancy now. And it's probably not going to work out getting Tom on the show.
Yeah, I don't think so, unless you're going to seance mode. I think that'll be tough.
That's probably the next podcast we're going to do, the seance mode podcast, where we bring people back from the dead, reanimate them. I think you could do that now with AI and shit. We probably should do that.
It's not a bad idea. I would see how that goes.
I'll get sued by I don't know, whoever the inheritance families are. Any tease outs of the book, any plot twists, anything you can tell us, because it's always you can't give away too much of the middle and the end of the book because you got to buy the book, people. That's why we're here. But any tease outs, any juicy stuff that you want to tease out?
I would just say that there's a lot of deception in the novel, and so that things things aren't necessarily as they seem, and that it's the relationships between operatives on the Israeli side and the American side lower down than at the high level political side. It's those lower down relationships that really drive the drama and ultimately lead to the shocking plot reveal.
There you go. The shocking plot reveal. That's the teaser, boys and girls. Order up the book because it's going to be there. So what's in the future for you? Do you see yourself any movies? Are you going to continue on with the series of this character?
Yeah, we've had. So I can't announce anything on the film side, but there have been some really fun discussions. I'm just now. Your listeners probably know because you've had so many authors on that there's a significant delay between when you hand your manuscript over to your editor and when it finally comes out. About like a year. And so I am just now finishing up my fourth book. So so you'll see the third book in this series next year, and we've reframed things. It'll be about China, and then a fourth book that is a standalone novel about something completely different, but in the same genre.
There you go. It's interesting to me, and I think what you say about how having the intelligence background makes for richer stuff. I've always been just intrigued, and spy stuff has been huge probably for the longest time. I don't know if it started with 007, James Bond, or before that. I'd have to think about movies, but we've always been enticed by the secretive nature and the intelligence. To me, it's like the chess game of it. I remember as a kid, first book was 1,000 Days, and reading about how John F. Kennedy had been deceived by the CIA, and all the intelligence that was going on in the Bay of Pigs, and then how that played into how he handled the Cuban Missile Crisis. We stood at the brink of wiping ourselves off the planet, and you read about so many different moving parts, especially like the CIA on its own, what the FBI does, Hoover, there's so many different plays of parts, and how they sometimes have been pivotal, or had moments that maybe sometimes saved the world and maybe sometimes made it worse. Pinochet.
It's your first point about, hey, when did this start? Was it James Bond? I think it kind of did. I think that's actually a pretty accurate observation, because he was a World War II guy that had gotten involved with the early stages of British intelligence. Ian Fleming wrote that book, and it took off. And then, for the next 20, 30 years, really, it was that Cold War chess game. Like John le Carré's The Spy Who Came In From the Cold very much embodies that, where it's like, hey, by the end, you realize there's been a cross, a double cross, and a triple cross, all, so that one could get on top of the other. And a lot of those, even though James Bond, there were a lot of physical aspects to that for entertainment value, a lot of that spy versus spy stuff has been mental, really psychological. And then around what really shook that up, I think, was 9/11. Then the genre changed quite a bit, so that in the 2000s and the last decade, the heroes pretty much are picking up a gun and shooting that thing, by page 5, right? Like, it got to be much more visceral and violent, and the big heroes became, Mitch Rapp, who's an assassin, the Gray Man, who's an assassin, etc. In my book, I'm hoping to get back a little bit to that chess match between nations. That is really the foundation of the book. But I also recognize that the genre has changed to demand some action, and that's why I created my protagonists as someone who is a spy master, that's really Meredith, and then someone who's on the ground as a gun wielding tough guy. Because I think people kind of want both, and this is all about providing strong entertainment.
Yeah, the spy mastery and the spy mastery works. I mean, it's interesting, how people they develop people and all the stuff that goes into it. It's just it's crazy. Spy versus spy, the game that we play. Yeah, have any thoughts on who the next James Bond should be now that we threw Bond into that?
Yeah, I mean, I recently wrote a piece that's out there actually because it's funny you ask about it because when I left Amazon not too long ago, and Amazon had acquired MGM, and MGM has the big reason for that acquisition is because MGM has the rights to James Bond. So now James Bond is an Amazon character, and that happens right as Daniel Craig. That James Bond literally died, right? So it becomes this big, multi-billion-dollar challenge as to okay, what do we do? Do we yes, there's another 007. Is his name James Bond? Because I think he just died. So it'll be interesting to see. And I've heard that there's been rumors, Harry Styles, and I can't remember all the actors.
Really?
Henry Cavill, maybe. Yeah, a lot of handsome British guys, Idris Elba. But I would imagine that they're racing to get that announced and are going to make as much PR value out of that as possible.
I'm sure they always do that. I mean, don't they usually do that?
Wouldn't you? I mean, you paid.
Oh yeah.
They paid $10 billion for MGM. The Bond franchise is a big part of that.
It definitely is. I was more angry that they killed him at the end. I kind of like how they and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think any of their Bonds they died on film. They just kind of
I looked into it.
Faded out, right?
Absolutely. No, I looked into it. It is literally the first time the man dies, and not just not like in a end of the Born Supremacy, or where you're not sure what happened. No, he not only died, they toasted him at the end, right?
Yeah. I mean,
it becomes I like I said, does that mean that they're stuck in prequel mode, or I don't know. I'm not sure what that's going to be.
To me, it was an ugly thing due to character that you really beloved. I like the whole, just make him disappear, say that, he retired, or, I don't know, he went and took care of the wife and kid there that he picked up at the end. Maybe, he went off you go off in the sunset, right? I mean, it's like the Western, you don't see, the cowboy goes off in the sunset, you just, okay, there he goes. And it's kind of the nice way. But
I agree. I really think it's a writing look, it was a big bang emotionally, right?
Oh yeah.
They certainly lit that up, giving him a daughter, and I mean, God forbid anybody watching this or listening to this hasn't already seen it, because we've spoiled the hell out of it. But hey, I think it's a year and a half old now. And so they played it up to the max, but it's okay, now what? I don't know.
And it was so visceral. I was angry about it. I was not violently, I didn't hurt anybody, but I was very juiced up about it. And I was not happy because seeing him killed, it was just, it's when you kill a character, I think it almost makes it harder to watch the earlier movies, which I'm a fan of, is Daniel Craig. And because you're like, well, this guy's fucking dead.
It's not a bad point. I guess the bet is that with Bond, it's like I was talking about earlier with the MCU, you're already willing to suspend disbelief, to come in and have some fun with this character because you know what it is and you know what to expect. So I suppose that's the big bet they made.
There you go. And the lifestyle that leads the masculine nature of James Bond is started getting whittled down in the movie. I mean, the whole family thing and stuff. I was just like, what? And
I know.
Yeah.
I know. They are right. It's like Sean Connery's turning over in his grave, right?
Yeah.
What is this? You're crying over your daughter? Come on.
Yeah. It was I suppose it appeals maybe to a broader audience, but I mean, come on, man. I think one of the biggest issues that I have with film nowadays is it plays a little bit too much to the culture and society's sort of views right now. And I think that really takes away from what the franchise was. It used to be the biggest audience for films was 12-year-old boys who would go to the movie theaters. And of course they could afford to. That's another thing. But nowadays it's really flipped, and it's more emotionalism based and feminine based. And I appreciate movies that are in that genre. I'm like, I really don't think that she's got the upper body strength for that I'm seeing. I have problems with CGI and stuff too.
I think this is an industry challenge, is that the big blockbusters that we're used to have to appeal to this audience that is actually going to go to the theater, right? And so now it feels like, man, if it's not a Marvel movie, then they don't make the investment to put it in the theater. They don't make as many movies, et cetera. Instead, it splinters up into these lower budget, very niche oriented films that are going to end up on streaming platforms. And so it feels rarer and rarer to find good entertainment that does both. Top Gun Maverick last year, I think that was an example of one. Everybody, that is super wide audience. Obviously, look how successful it was. But that was one where you could see a guy in his 50s with his wife sitting next to his kids, and all of them enjoying the crap out of it, right? And so it would certainly be nice to see more of that. With respect to intelligence thrillers, I think there's fewer that feel real to me, and more and more that are kind of like crazy comic booky, funny one-liners and entertaining, but not necessarily realistic. I did see one though over the weekend called Kandahar. I think it's probably a pretty small film, but I saw it in the theater. It has Gerard Butler in it, and man, I thought it was cool. It was
really
it was very similar to my book, Dead Drop. It's it opens up with the Iranian underground nuclear facility at Natanz getting blown up, and then the spies who more or less were responsible for it on the run into Afghanistan, which borders Iran, and all the trouble that makes. So I was super happy to see a movie like that.
There you go. Well, if you recommend it, I'll go check it out, because I love great movies. I was looking at that. I've been, ever since COVID's over, I love going to the theater again. Yeah, and I also love it because no one goes either. So I have the place.
Seats have gotten better. I mean, they're reclining.
The seats. Yeah, there's a new theater that they have by us, and we do have one of those beer places. They serve excellent pizza, and you can eat the pizza at they got like a table there between the chairs. It's like it's called Broovies here in Salt Lake, and I love it. And it was nice when I used to drink. But the pizzas they make are fucking out of this world, and probably more healthier than eating that butter popcorn. But I'll check that movie out. But I'm constantly looking for good movies to see, and it's so hard to tell. Did you check out The Covenant?
I did not.
I don't know if it's good, but yeah, you're right. They make these movies now. They're kind of like the Rolling Stones kind of got into that gear where they would do, and it was kind of a genre there for a while with albums where they do like one or two good hits on the album, and the rest is just filler B-sides, right? Yeah. And that's what made people get sick of music and devalue it and go, we'll just download it off the internet. Was because you listen to Led Zeppelin 1 and 2, like the whole album is like, you got to listen to the whole album. Yeah. There isn't I don't think there's a track on there where you're like, well, this one.
Well, I mean, that's the business model, right? It used to be you'd go and you'd buy that thing, and now you stream and you're paid, right? So it's no longer a package the way that it used to be. I think when Led Zeppelin did that, I agree. It's like, hey, this whole thing has like this one sound, and you're going to listen to it. And we ordered the songs in a certain way. Now you go on Spotify, and you can listen to it by album, but most of the time you don't. It's stuff's just served at you, and that's how you discover it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully things will get better with everything. I hope they don't ruin the Bond franchise by doing something really stupid with it, because you want. I think every guy idealizes himself and puts himself in that movie. He gets the beautiful girl. Most all guys love their women. They think that they've won the great woman in their life, their wife or whatever it is. They have that ideal of like, I've worked hard and accomplish things, and so the whole intelligence thing is so much fun.
Don Bentley, who's going to be on in 2 days, we were in Austin the other night having a drink after a book event, and we were talking about book covers, right? And so he's doing the Tom Clancy book, I think, that he's coming on to talk to you about. but he said, look, when it comes to covers, every guy wants to visualize himself as, the hero, right? And so if you're going to have a person, so you can see, let's see my book over here.
There
right?
you go.
If you're going to have a person, right, and a guy's going to read it, he wants to look at it and think, I want to be like that guy. Or a woman is going to say, I want to, get with that guy. I think Lee Child, who writes the Jack Reacher series, said that he modeled Reacher to be a character that guys would want to be and women would want to be with. And I think at the end of the day, that's kind of right. Even though we probably don't necessarily want to admit it, we want a good story and all those kinds of things. I think there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah, when I used to be in advertising and stuff, the key thing of when you look at ads, when a woman looks at an ad, she's like, what is that woman wearing? And the woman's always the feature. The guy is always the accessory in the background. And she looks at, what is that woman wearing? And she's beautiful. So I'm going to go buy accessories or clothes, whatever. And the guy looks at it and goes, what is that guy wearing to get that girl? And that's basically how that works. Right. Yeah.
We're not too hard to figure out. Right.
Yeah. We're pretty simple creatures. So don't, fix the movies. Make it so that men want to go back to the movies.
What is James Bond doing that he's got so much luck with this?
Yeah. There was a recent, is it Thor movie? There was a recent Thor movie that came out where the whole movie is tension between him and like an ex-superhero girlfriend. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? We're bringing ex-girlfriends into movies now?
Right.
Like, what kind of weird stuff is that?
We don't need that crap. It's a superhero.
It's a superhero. He doesn't want to hang out with ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess you got to create sexual tension these days. What do we know? Well, it's been wonderful, Mike, to have you on the show again and come back for the show. Anything more you want to tease on the book before we go?
No, I hope, I would say that this is a book that you don't have to read The Handler, but it's most people, I think, who have read this said, oh, I can't wait to go back and read The Handler now. So enjoy both.
There you go. Give us your .coms wherever you want people to find you.
mpwoodward.com. It's mpwoodward.com. And all my social stuff is right there. And I love to interact with my audience. It's a lot of fun.
There you go, folks. You're going to find it's juicy. Juicy as juicy can get. It's juicy as juicy fruits. Do I get a check for saying juicy fruits? Anyway, folks, it's available wherever fine books are sold. May 23rd, 2023, if you're watching this 10 years from now, which people do. Dead Drop, a Handler thriller. MP Woodward. You can order it wherever fine books are sold and look forward to his future works. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time. And that should have us out, Mike.